Today we're going to take a look at another obvious attack on God, and we're going to take a look at the factions involved. Matter of fact, I dug around, found out that we already know this is a small minority, but the key players on here, wow, you wouldn't believe it. They have an army of almost 30 people. And when we dig a little bit deeper, we're going to find out more facts of who's behind it and how the media is playing up to this, giving these 29 people all the press and everything. I don't know if it's right to even mention this. You know, the more press they get, the more famous they get, and the more people they can actually have on their side. But let's jump right back into the Bible. Small minorities have always been a problem in the Bible. When we look at the stories with the thought of small minorities, we can look at Egypt. Pharaoh and his priest were a small minority. Actually, we get that from the fact that when they saw the Jews growing in number, they were afraid. And then after they left Egypt in Exodus, we have stories that tell us a small minority of unbelievers, pagans, people that really believed that Pharaoh and his priest were telling the truth, were on the outskirts of, people estimated maybe a million people left Egypt following Moses. Small minority. Got in, grew, influenced people. These are plans the devil's always had. The devil's always had the plan, not always had the plan, he would rather use the majority of people, but the devil's only been able to use a small minority of people. But then with his plans, he tries to convince them that they're actually a greater number than what they actually are. It's a trick of the devil. Well, it's basically a lie. And then we can go through the Bible. We can look at Kings and Chronicles. We can look at the split up of Israel and Judah. Israel, yeah, they always had an evil king. But the evil king was, still a minority? And if we look into the story deep enough, we find out that all the priests left Israel and went to go live in the land that Judah possessed. Well, along with those priests, wouldn't it make common sense that there's probably a whole bunch of people that wound up going with them? I mean, realistically, we look at it, and the priests had their own towns that they were given. And when the priests left, don't you think they took maybe the whole town with them? Still, always a small minority, no matter what we look at with pictures. Now, we can take a look at another small minority, the Christians. After Jesus died, the Christians, his followers, were a small minority. But guess what happened? They grew. So if you're on the side of righteousness, on the side of Christ, you're going to see phenomenal things happen. The things the world doesn't expect to see. And we can take another example of a minority when we look at Rome, the one that executed Jesus. They made a mistake because, read your history books. Rome made a mistake. Eventually, the slaves were like what? I'm just going to guess, pull a figure out, 80% of the population. And that wasn't the smartest thing to do. But still, the people that ran everything were a small minority. So with that in mind, let's take a look at this small minority that we have today. I gathered a few little clips out of off the internet today and put them on there. And we're going to start out with a little speech from a minority figure on excuse me, I forgot to look at exactly where this was, but it was in one of the states that passed some common sense laws that made it illegal for any doctor to perform any mutilation surgeries, trans surgeries on a minor. Which makes
your testimony.
Heat from fire and fire from heat. My name is Loren Perkins. I'm a transgender person, and I'm here to testify against SB 12, SB 1601, and any future anti-trans, queer, or other LGBTQIA legislation that comes before this body. I have appeared before the City Council, but this is my first time that I've graced this chamber with my presence, so my voice may be shaky, my hands may be trembling, but it is not out of fear or trepidation, but out of indignation and righteous anger. I've been graciously provided by this body a mere 2 minutes to plead the case for my humanity. This morning, I spent not an inconsequential amount of time pondering what to wear, how to do my makeup, what I should sound like, how I could best present myself to make my humanity clear and obvious to this committee. Isn't that a shame? In reality, it should be obvious that I'm deserving of the same rights and privileges afforded everyone else. By hiding your bigotry behind children like cowards, you will find yourself on the wrong side of history. By manipulating the words of an ancient text and shoehorning it into legislation aimed at an at-risk minority population, you liken yourselves to another group that gained popularity in Germany in the 1930s. If you have ever wondered what you would have done had you been a member of the so-called greatest generation, then simply look around to what you are doing in this moment. When a small man with a smaller mustache stood before crowds and proclaimed himself superior to others, I see you here doing the same. The first books that the Nazi Party burned were those of Magnus Hirschfeld and the Institute of Sexual Health. Some of the first imprisoned under the Nazi Party rule were homosexual and transgender people. Likely the first woman to undergo a successful gender reassignment surgery was killed in that same prison. When those prison camps were freed by the Allies, we were the ones who were still kept in prison for our so-called crimes. For loving who we love, and for living our truth. We can see through this veneer of legislation and assess the intended target. The continued marginalization and othering of the LGBTQIA plus community. Rhetoric intended to strike fear into the hearts of the people of this state. I will not sit here and debate your fascist ideology, as peddlers of intolerance deserve no such stage on a public forum. I will not appear to the notions of tax base, of jobs, or business growth in this state. They are inconsequential of the recognition of the basic rights of your fellow human.
Thank you for your testimony.
The bill is 2 seconds away from the outdated, discriminatory 3 articles laws of the 20th century, and I will not stand for it. We will not stand for it. We may not win today, and we may not win tomorrow, but we will persist as we always have in the fight of your oppression. If you wish to eradicate transgenderism from the public life, as members of your party have said, to put on your ears, you can pry that with a cold dead hands.
Well, as we can see, he's a small minority. I don't know how many of you actually have gone to town hall meetings or whatever, council meetings, or went and talked in front of your representatives. We have town hall meetings here from time to time. Did you ever notice that the only ones that hold the town hall meetings are Republicans? Democrats never do. And if you email a Republican, you're going to get at least an answer. If it's an important issue and it's something they really think it's important, they'll have their aide give you a call. And if it's a really important issue and they want you to do some extra work on it, you'll actually get a call from the representative themselves. But you don't get that from Democrats. If you send the same email to a Democrat, you might, just might, get a form letter that goes out that has absolutely nothing to do with the subject that you brought up. But I gotta tell you, when I was 5 years old, my dad used to take me to town hall meetings. And I'd be sitting there thinking, Dad, what am I doing here? Well, it's kind of an old Polish tradition that because they collected the taxes locally in the towns and villages and sections of the cities and all that stuff, the people wanted to make sure that the money was being spent the right way. So they would hold these town hall meetings and they would bring the entire family to these town hall meetings. So my dad would bring me to these town hall meetings. And it took me years, but now today I realize that Going to those town hall meetings is important. But when I go to these town hall meetings, I'm 65 years old and I'm probably one of the youngest people to attend those. But we do get some really great ideas out to the representatives, and it's kind of exciting to talk in these town hall meetings, and all of a sudden you get an email from them that says, we introduced a bill and you were actually part of the government. We're actually the people running the government the way it should be in a republic. Now in those town hall meetings, I got to kind of laugh because I went to 4 of them in a row, and there was this young guy there, obvious communist, and he would go through his little communist speech. And the 4th time I went to the town hall meeting and saw him there, he went through the exact same speech. I mean, it was like he memorized this thing. And he got about a third of the way into it, and a couple of people started telling him, sit down, we don't need to listen to this stuff. It's kind of interesting because it shows that the communists really don't care anything about the subject at hand. They're going to say what they want to say, but they really don't have any ideas. They don't dedicate themselves to thinking or coming up with ideas or concepts. They don't even try to solve the problems. It's always demands. And looking back, I'd have to say that young man was either given a script or wrote up a script, and 4 meetings in a row he goes through the same thing. Big difference between communists and conservatives, or shall I say patriots. Anyway, we have this one person trying to make his point, and it got to the point that, the people at that meeting basically had enough. He wasn't going anywhere. He wasn't contributing to anything. And you see, he actually went and spouted off violence, which is what we're seeing. Well, this is the last week in March, and we just got the news about that shooting at the Christian school in Nashville where 9 children were slain and 3 adults, and it came out that it was a trans shooter. And a trans shooter went in and specifically targeted Christians, which is, where'd they get the idea from? Well, I did another video you can take a look at. It dealt with the fact that we got to ask the questions. We got to ask questions. I mean, Biden comes out, all he wants to do is ban guns. Banning guns, that'll solve the problem. Well, we got to look at, number one, there are people in the trans community, in the gay community, that need counseling. I've talked to some of them, and a lot of times you just want somebody to listen. Somebody, if they get the feeling that people understand them, that at least someone will accept them, it makes them feel a whole lot better. And there are others that really need some deep, heavy counseling. And there are others that have went through really traumatic experiences. You got to realize that a lot of these things spring out of abuse. I don't know of any that have been going through these, using drugs, and who knows what's that's doing to them. They need to really look into that. And the other part of it is, what are these counselors? Because when they go through these operations and stuff and all these drugs, they're meeting with a counselor. What are these counselors telling them? We know that the shooter in Nashville was seeing a counselor, and that counselor failed to alert the police that this person can be a risk. We should all have state laws that says, well, okay, when counselors recognize risk, and these are trained, licensed professionals, when they recognize this risk, by law, they have to report this to the local police department so the police can follow up on it. Simple. Biden may not be able to ban all of his guns in the United States, but maybe he should start looking at some ideas that just might help save lives in the future. So, what is it that make these people crack? We really don't know because the shooter obviously is deceased. They have some information that they're still going over. I mean, it's only been 24, 36, 48 hours. And are they going to release that information to us? No. But one of the things that really popped up that kind of irks, I think, every single conservative is the fact that you have factions like Antifa that's getting the Trans Day of Violence that they're planning. To go out and make a statement. Who knows what they're going to do that. And of all days, they pick April 1st. April 1st. What is that? April Fool's Day? Great day for Antifa to organize a demonstration. Well, there are a few articles out there. The Daily Caller ran a series of articles that talked about the mental health issue. And we can take a look at that and go over it. I'd open it up. It says the statement goes on to say that transgender people suffer from an array of mental health issues such as PTSD and depression. I don't know. They're almost trying to post-traumatic stress syndrome. I mean, when did we first hear that? We heard that when soldiers, our military was coming back from the Iraq War. I mean, every time they say that, they're trying to make heroes out of these people. And that's wrong. I mean, they should come up with something else to call it. That's just my opinion. Okay, you say that's due to the near constant drumbeat of the anti-trans legislation, unaccepting family members, and trans-skeptical religious institutions. I mean, basically, that's what they're doing. We just saw that guy. He went in there and attacked the legislators. And we just saw that this trans person attacked the religions. So they're basically calling, it's a call to arms that should be investigated. This is a small minority that really should be dealt with. And I don't know why they're not doing anything about it. Then there's a little article about we are quickly moving on from we will kill ourselves if you don't use our pronouns to we will kill you if you ban sex changes for minors. I mean, that kind of sums it up right there. There was that threat from Antifa that jumped on there, and they're jumping on the bandwagon trying to get their publicity. And this is really kind of strange because Marjorie Taylor Greene, real patriot, she got her Twitter account suspended because she warned about what's going to happen in Washington D.C. or wherever they're gathering. I think they're gathering in Washington D.C. But the network that we're taking a look at, or the organization we're taking a look at today, because it's come up on the news, and the news really doesn't explain what this organization is. They released, their little Twitter accounts. They're on, what is the TikTok and everything else. They say, prepare to defend yourself now. This weekend has already provided us with 2 crystal clear reasons why we need to prepare to defend ourselves at a moment's notice against Nazis and fascists. Don't get scared, get prepared. Well, how many years has this group and other groups, and I'm talking about the Democratic Party and all this stuff, been calling every white person a Nazi and a fascist. And one thing to kind of look at is Antifa thinks they're really slick. As a matter of fact, they used to have it on their website. They explained why they call themselves Antifa or anti-fascist. You see, in World War II, the Nazis, they, had the communists, I don't know, no, it was a fascist, in Italy, and they joined forces with the fascists in Spain. That kind of fizzled out rather quick, but Italy was in the war for quite some time. And Italy was the first one to surrender to the Allied forces. Well, let's just say the Americans. So the Nazis really, Hitler went berserk. You know how Hitler goes berserk on everything. Anyway, he made this speech and he basically condemned the fascist. Because he was a Nazi, he had his own theories, and it was his ultimate plan to take over the world, and he probably would have gotten rid of the fascists, just like he got rid of his brown shirts right after he got elected. Well, so Hitler called the fascists cowards. That's why Antifa took the name anti-fascist. In their little group, calling themselves anti-fascists is like saying we're not cowards. Because you look at them, they're all of what, 110 to 130 pounds. And anyway, you all know enough about Antifa. Anyway, I ran across this little cartoon. I just kind of love cartoons. I mean, if we can't laugh at the situation, what good is life? We get depressed, but the clown reading their book, and wow, what's the real reason behind reading those books? I mean, it kind of sums it up. It's kind of subliminal and everything, but when we look at this article that's in the Daily Caller, they actually did a little bit of research. And the main headline in there, or the main focus point, is the Trans Resistance Network, notably only has 29 followers on its Facebook, and as of this writing has only updated its website 3 times over the past year. Well, I looked at their website. It's a free WordPress thing that somebody put all of 15 minutes into, and they claim to be this organized group and all this other stuff and everything, but these guys are amateurs. Hey, come on, 29 people? I mean, can you say tiny minority? Can you say insignificant minority? But that's what we're up against. My guess is we're looking at such a small minority, and I'd like the members of the gay community to chime in. My guess is that as a whole, the gay community would just as soon have all these people go away. Just like all of us white people want to see all the Nazis go away. We don't like them. We don't even associate with them. We don't want anything to do with them. We don't even want to read about them. But then there's another rumor flying around, even though this is only a small minority, and this is only one group that sprang up. These groups are just like every other communist group. They don't trust each other. They'll use one another to get their point across, but they have so many factions and they have so many different beliefs. That's why you got all these different pronouns, because each group wants to make a name for themselves by coming up with another pronoun, and they detest the other ones having different pronouns. But I've seen this, and I really should check it out, dig into it deeper, but I don't really feel like it. I mean, the Colorado Spring shooter was non-binary. The Denver shooter identified as trans. The Aberdeen shooter identified as trans. The Nashville shooter identified as trans. I know the Nashville shooter verified that one. I don't know about these other ones, so check it out. Don't take my word for it, or somebody that just put together this quick meme. I call them memes. I don't know. Anyway, we should check this stuff out. But they probably didn't know each other. They're probably influenced by different groups, different associations, and we got to look into the fact that if this is true, were these people seeing psychologists or counselors or whatever, and is that the next tier to who's ever ultimately in charge funding these people? I don't know if it's Soros or what, but and then we have good old Tucker Carlson, and Tucker sums it up to the letter. I've watched this one, and I would have to agree with Tucker Carlson 100%. I don't always agree with Tucker 100%, but hey, we're in America. We can take what we want out of somebody's statement, and we can disagree. He says the trans movement, it turns out, is the mirror image of Christianity, and therefore its natural enemy. People who believe they're God can't stand to be reminded that they're not. Well, Tucker, where'd you get that from? Well, let me explain exactly where he got that from. If we go to the Church of Satan website, we can read right on there. They proudly display their creed at the end of the page. It says, "We Satanists are thus our own gods." You notice how they even capitalize gods? I mean, realistically, in the Christian world, you only capitalize God when you're referring to the Creator. Everything else, and you look through the Bible, and it's consistent through every Bible translation I've ever seen. When they mention or use the word gods as in false gods, it's always a small g. But these guys want to capitalize it, and Tucker made the mistake of capitalizing it too, but that's why I say you don't always agree with everything Tucker says. And as beneficent deities, they got to repeat this. You know how they say gods and deities? They mean the same thing. We can offer love to those who deserve it and deliver our wrath upon those who seek to cause us or that which we cherish harm. Well, okay, so the Satanists aren't afraid to go out and admit it. And we have these same radical groups in the LGBTQ community that basically believe the exact same thing, and they don't exactly post that on their website, but they do reference it in their statements. Are they Satanists too? I really don't know. So when we go through all this stuff and put it together, we're still looking at the fact that these people are attacking God. That's their primary objective. They're attacking Christians, but they're actually attacking God. They want to do away with Christianity. They just can't stand someone that disagrees with them. And for the most part, I know patriots are like, hey, make your own decision. Live your life the way you want to. I got no problem with it. That's what we all want to do. We all want to live our lives and be left alone and have respect for one another. whatever your nationality, race, creed, color, and we don't even care about your sexual preferences. We just want to be left alone. And that's true for every conservative, every patriot. And we really detest the fact that the media jumps all over this stuff. Especially shows like The View and everything that just take and twist and turn these things around and try to make heroes out of people that go out and shoot children. Come on, how sick can you be? But that's basically what's been transpiring since that shooting in Nashville. And how are we going to put a stop to it? We eventually have to, and any ideas, put them down in there. But we know God can defend himself.